found out because my now deceased husband, actually, he had gotten very, very sick, and this was way back in the 80s. He had gotten very, very sick, and we didn't know why. He was very fatigued. He became very fatigued with simple everyday activities. He started losing weight drastically for no apparent reason. And then he had developed thrush in the back of his throat. We had no idea why. I guess in my mind, I was thinking more in the lines of leukemia, maybe cancer. But finally, he decided to go to the doctor when he had become so sick he couldn't eat or swallow. He went to the doctor, and the doctor suggested he have back then it was called the HTLV3 test. And that was a name given for HIV test. And the doctor suggested that. Well, first of all, he had to educate us as to what that test was. And when he said to test for HIV, I thought I was going to fall out of my chair, because back then you didn't hear a lot about it. There wasn't a lot known about it. There weren't any medications available. And I think back then stats were like 1 in a million people. And so I'm literally thinking, if you get a room big enough to put 1 million people in, there might be one person that is going to be diagnosed. And I'm thinking, there is absolutely no way. But my husband agreed to the test. He had his blood drawn, and we were told to go home, wait approximately 2 weeks. And I can assure you it was a very long 2 weeks waiting for that time to pass. But once the time frame had passed, we went back in to see the doctor. My husband was called to the back, but immediately upon entering the doctor's office, I remember hearing the receptionist talk among themselves. And I remember her saying, "Oh my goodness," as we were walking through the door to enter the office, she said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's the guy with the cute little blonde-headed boy." And so our son was not quite, well, he was 4 years old at the time. And I remember, hearing that, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound good. So we did proceed to wait in the lobby for a few moments until my husband was called to the back. And when he did make it back to see the doctor, not only was his diagnosis HIV, but it had already progressed to AIDS. And so therefore the doctor suggested that our son be tested as well as myself. And I just remember thinking, how could this be? Again, I went back to that stat way back then, 1 in a million. It's just like, what are the chances of that happening? And I became very, very angry. I remember people asking about him, how's he doing? And I would lie and tell them, oh, he has cancer. And there was so much sympathy and empathy in regard to that. And I'm not making light of cancer by any means, but I felt like that I had to walk on eggshells. I couldn't let anyone know, which, for me was very, very hard. I ended up losing my nice new home, because when you go from 2 major incomes to little to no money, as my job was actually trying to fire me. They wanted me to quit, but I needed money so desperately after my husband couldn't work. I refused to quit, and they ended up having to fire me. But I remember losing our nice new home. And a lot of times I think what people don't understand is that once people get their diagnosis, it's not only the fact of trying to cope with the diagnosis itself, but it's all the other things, the added burdens, if you will, that society places upon you, and all the extra things that you have to think of, not only in regard to HIV directly, but it's all the indirect things. Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, black, white, young, old, gay, straight, male, or female. Can it happen in a marriage? Absolutely. Point being is that it could be any of us. All the virus needs is a human T cell to grow and replicate. And guess what? We're all human. I want to be known when I'm no longer here as, again, not as any better than anyone else, but I want to be known as something positive, no pun intended. But, it doesn't cost anyone anything to smile back at someone, or to give them a hug, or to give them a handshake, or, just to stop and listen to them if they need someone to talk to. And I look for those opportunities a lot harder today than I ever have before. And every day that I wake up, I feel like I've been given another gift. And so many times I wake up and I think before my feet even hit the floor, what am I going to accomplish today? What am I really going to accomplish today? Or whose life am I going to impact in a positive way? And again, I think I value the little simple things in life, whereas to some people, and even myself included, before my diagnosis, I took a lot of things for granted. I find myself not doing that so much anymore. When you can put a face with HIV and AIDS, it usually makes all the difference in the world. And when you make it very real, it's not just something that's out there. It's not something that's in another city, county, country. It's right here in the United States, and it's here big time. And again, not out of sympathy, but empathy. Whatever it takes to get people to truly understand. And a lot of times it's through tears, and it does get very emotional for me. But if that's what it takes, and for me to stand up and share a lot of my muck and my yuck and bad choices that I've made in my life, if that's what it takes to get people to stop and think about their choices and actions, then I consider it to be pretty fortunate, because they've learned something from me. And not that I have any better words than anyone else or the next person that's coming along, but I have a story like many other stories out there. And my hope is just that people will continue to learn something from me.